Hello guys, it's Chama Thunder here doing another Bakugan BakuTech Retrospect episode. This is episode 5 on Gran Panzer. This was originally released as BTC 12, and was also the first original BakuTech Bakugan to be released in a box, not a blister pack. This same version was also re-released in BCV 23 Shield of Super Bridge. It is a Subterra Bakugan, and its G power, both for the original release and the BCV re-release, is 520, 540, or 560. Gran Panzer was also released in December of 2010. Taking a look at its ball form, it does look really nice. It has kind of this darker tan color, which was pretty good for Subterra. I kind of wish they stuck to this, but you also have this really nice dark green print on Gran Panzer. Also quite a bit of metal, as Gran Panzer does have a pretty significant amount of metal, especially for the time period. But anyway, let's go ahead and open it up. Once open, Gran Panzer does have two manual parts, which are these two guns up here, which just come out fairly simply. It does have a fairly nice looking open form and is quite small, all things considered, but just taking a quick 360, you can see it is quite detailed as well though. So as far as specific physical attributes go, there are a few things here. First up, it does have two cross pieces, and they do come in metal, but also these four smaller kind of leg pieces are also made out of metal. So this thing does have quite a bit of metal, again, especially for such an early Bakugan release in BakuTech. It technically has the most at 6 metal pieces, though you can debate the effectiveness of that because 4 of them are definitely smaller than other pieces that we've seen on other Bakugan, such as Flare Dragon or Dystrammunicus, which can have 4 proper metal pieces. This thing was marketed as an extremely powerful defensive Bakugan. The 2 cross pieces are positioned fairly low, and also those leg pieces are near the ground, and the idea is that it is very bottom heavy. It is an interesting idea, but as we'll talk about later, this might not have worked as well as they would have hoped. The idea of being kind of this stocky, heavy Bakugan was intended for defensive use. Again, more on that later. Now, as far as closing Gran Panzer goes, this is actually a fairly straightforward Bakugan. You simply close up these cannons here, put in these kind of rocket-like pieces which just fold up pretty simply, and then this whole part just kind of collapses down as one piece, with the head kind of sticking out a bit, but that just kind of slots in fairly simply, although sometimes they do pop out a bit, but usually should stay. And after that, these leg pieces just fold up pretty simply, and with that, we have closed Gran Panzer. As far as who owned Gran Panzer, it's actually kind of a unique case. Gran Panzer is owned by Pumpkey. This was an antagonist and a member of the Baku Thieves. However, this is only in the manga, as in the anime, the Baku Thieves kind of just don't really exist, and instead we just have Zakuro, so Pumpkey, along with his Gran Panzer, aren't really there. So this is largely just a manga-specific Bakugan, at least in a relevant capacity. Now let's move on to the variants. The gold version was released in BTC 20, the Perfect Stand Set, and was later re-released in BCV 22, Grey Dragon. The original release had 560Gs, but the re-release had 580Gs. The green armor version released in BCV 20 Blue Blaze, and was later re-released in BCV 22 Grey Dragon. The original release could come in 520, 540, or 560Gs, with the re-release being 600Gs. The white armor version was released in BCV 25 Emperor's Second Coming, and was 700Gs. Now let's talk about competitive. So in BakuTech, Gran Panzer was never really that good. I guess in the early days you could argue it was a decent curve shot Bakugan and had some utility for double stands, but that's really about it. As more Bakugan released, this role just diminished further and further, and it was never ideal. The reason is because its metal distribution was always just kind of awkward. The 4 built-in metal pieces weren't as consistent as having something like metal soul pieces, and its whole idea of being this powerful defense type was kind of a joke, honestly. I've mentioned this many times in BakuTech videos, but with defense, you do need a level of occupancy to back up said defense. Gran Panzer does not have this at all. It's kind of the same problem as trying to use G-Ganorada as the defensive Bakugan, because while the gravity ring does deflect things, it's just not a big Bakugan, so even though it stays on the card pretty well, it's more so defensive utility, not an actual defensive Bakugan. Gran Panzer's even worse. There's really nothing here that allows it to just plant on the card. It's just kind of bottom heavy, and while it's not necessarily a bad thing, it's not horrible, it's also not actually that good at defense either, and a lot of regular Bakugan are just better than it. Being as small as it is, and also the fact that the legs don't really stop it from falling over that well, especially when they allow direct hits from the front or back and sides to just kind of topple it over, yeah, this thing isn't going to work very well. Again, it did have a level of curve shot utility, I guess, and could be a decent double stand Bakugan, although not good, but based on my own tier list, it ranks around the bottom of C tier. But anyways, that's all for this video. Gran Panzer is a pretty nice Bakugan, and it's fairly easy to get, but trying to use this thing isn't ideal, and unfortunately it doesn't really work the way it was intended to work. But anyways, that's all for now. Next episode will be on Dio Civic, so anyways, until then, thanks for watching, and bye-bye.